All right, are you ready, Sharon? You ready? All right, I'd like to bring the Personnel Committee meeting to order. Someone's calling in. Imagine it's Peg.
Hi, Peg. Hold on, I'll take it.
All right, Peggy's fine? Well, she's ice in front of her house. Yes.
Okay.
I thought it was always sunny in Utopia, too, but she lives in Nazareth. All right, I'd like to open the meeting up with courtesy of the floor. Seeing no one, courtesy of the floor. Keep getting messages here. Okay, we open up with the second thing on the agenda is review of the county executive's appointments. A is...
It's Bob again.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Hold
No
on.
problem.
The Industrial Development Authority. Recommendation for appointment to the Industrial Development Authority. Mr. Brown is submitting the following individual for appointment to the Industrial Development Authority. Ms. Rice's resume is attached. The appointment of Gretchen Rice from Bethlehem, PA is being considered for a 5-year term to begin March 18, 2017 and to end March 17, 2022. Resume is attached. Any questions, comments?
Just a comment. She's
Comment?
overqualified to serve on this authority.
Well, anybody that wants to serve on any authority is a hero to me, so that's a good thing. So, thank you to Gretchen. We'll pass this on to tomorrow night's meeting.
Bob?
No, it's Glenn. I got bumped off.
Oh, no.
You hung up on Glenn.
I don't know what's going on then.
Okay, what'd you do with my pen? Give me my pen.
Yeah, my pen.
Thank you. All right, next thing is number 3, review of the personnel request. District Attorney's Office, Assistant District Attorney. I don't see John here. Is anybody here representing the DA's office for this this request? Amy? Ms. Trapp?
When I had seen Mr. Morganelli, he said that he was going to be here. I know he wanted to talk about it, but his concern was taking...
Yes, Seth called in.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to try and connect you.
It's 2017. I'm telling you. Imagine if your Jets ran this way.
Just-
The New York Jets did.
Yeah. Are we ready? Can we continue? Just hang up on everybody. All right.
All right.
Hold on, Peg.
Yeah, I keep getting disconnected.
I know. I don't know why. Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead. Just make like they're not there.
All right.
I know. I am. Just make pretend they're not there. They'll keep calling in and out.
Okay. I know that he planned to be here. He is taking 2 part-time positions in exchange for 2 full-time positions. His budget can afford to do so with some of the larger cases that he has moving forward. He's taking more tenured assistant district attorneys, moving them into permanent full-time positions, which he will allow him to handle the cases better, and they'll start on a lower scale as the new full-time. So.
Okay,
It's pretty cut and dry for him. He said that his budget is able to handle it. He won't need any additional funds.
Right, and I know Mr. Morganelli runs a tight ship down there. They never have increases any year. I don't know how he does it, so I have no problem with putting this forward. Does anybody want to have the DA come tomorrow night to explain this further? It's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody need that or request that?
He's always welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
He
sure.
attached a memo. I think a memo came with the...
Yeah, I have the whole, it's all
form.
written up here in the back.
And the other thing, just really quick, as we lead into this, the other thing that I had done was change the form that you all see, which hopefully was helpful. There used to be an eliminate form, a create form, but it never let you see the net. So what I did was I created a form that showed you the eliminate, the create, and then the net difference. So hopefully that's helpful, because it never made sense to me that they were on different forms and you couldn't see what the variance was.
Right, and everybody has a part-time assistant DA, 2 full-time assistant DAs. Effective March 16th, pay grade CE group 3201A. You know, it's in his budget. I guess by removing it, it's 104. By adding, it's 150. It's $46,000 difference for the, you know, full-time as opposed to part-time.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's, okay. Thank you. I don't think, you better not sit down. There's more stuff. Next one I have here is the Department of Court Administration, Problem-Solving Court. This is one law clerk, new position, a law clerk, Problem-Solving Court Administrator. The position is $67,425. Upgraded position is $77,566. The net difference is $10,947, including, you know, workers' comp, prescription, retirement, life insurance, everything that goes with it. One of the current law clerks will be assuming additional job duties related to administrating the problem-solving courts. And these two gentlemen will take it from there.
She has assumed those duties for the last 2.5 years without any compensation. And that was at the inception of the problem-solving courts. And I approached Judge Daly, and I did indicate that I think with the additional duties that she has assumed, I thought the $10,000 raise would be adequate. And Judge Daly agreed and asked me to put forth this proposal, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention to get that approved. She has the knowledge, skills, and abilities. She performs at a high level with our problem-solving courts, in mental health court and the drug court. And we're also taking on some veterans, if we can, in that court to compensate in both problem-solving courts to address veterans. We don't have the population for the veterans right now, but we do want to address that, and the law clerk has sought grants for us to do that. Also, she does all the coordinating in that. It's a big task. I contacted some other jurisdictions. Montgomery County, right now, their coordinator makes $62,725 plus benefits. Berks County right now is $59,662 plus benefits. And I wasn't able to get, I wanted to get one more, Luzerne County. I'm waiting for a call back from that. So with this proposal at $10,000, I feel it's fiscally responsible for the court to put this forth for your consideration.
And it's well within the budget of the courts. I mean, they have it. And this saves us money, right?
Yes.
If you're solving, if you're, instead of incarcerating and you're doing something other for these people, it's a, saves us a lot of money.
I mean, we
In the long
presently
run.
have, in response to your question, we presently have 33 enrolled. We've had 2 successful graduates, and the reason we've had so few graduates is because it's an 18 to 24-month program, and we're just approaching our 2-year anniversary in April. And we receive applications right along. And most of these people, in fact, I would say all of the 33 would be incarcerated.
Right, which,
And then mental health court, we currently have 14 enrolled. We've had 6 successful graduates from that program. And that program can be a little quicker than the drug court. And that's diversionary, whereas the drug court is opposed to traditional. Yes.
There has been some discussion on the past as far as clerks, are they a career role,
Yeah.
or is this a, apprenticeship program?
Right.
Do you see this role,
Which is a
not
shame.
this role, more as a professional, do you expect that person to be in there for an extended period of time versus somebody who commits for 2 years, gets modified?
That's a very good question. I don't envision a person a clerk coming in, say a 2-year clerk, to be able to handle these duties because they're overwhelmed with the duties they have as a clerk. So you would need a seasoned person to do that. My clerk, Stephanie Spencer, just happens to fit that bill. She's been with me, and this is my 8th year, and she was with Judge Moran prior to that. And so she's looked at the clerkship as a career clerkship, and I've realized there's different schools of thought on that. Were she to leave the county, I think that this position would change, and there may not be a person that's available to step into that role that is a clerk. We may then have to look to someone else outside of the current clerkship complement in order to do the work. but she's able to do it because of being an experienced clerk, and also she comes to the courts with a social services background. She went to law school as a second career, and is kind of a unique fit for the position.
Thanks for clarifying. I've always found that a little confusing in regards to what's the role that clerk and the clerk has involved. We've not asked them to consider that, so I think they would shed some light on it. But she has special, so this actually would be, if she did this for like the next 5 or 7 years, she would be perfect.
Yes, and there's different schools of thought on that. And like in the federal system, like say a federal judge could have 3 clerks, one of whom is a career clerk, and the other 2 clerks come in and out on a 1 or 2 year basis. Here in the county, we have some clerks that have been here for a longer tenure than others, and really I think that depends upon the preference of the judge, and also what kind of work relationship you have with the person to begin with. But I will say that those clerks that have longer experience bring a lot of value to the court in terms of being able to mentor the other clerks, and also they produce a great work product, which is important for our system of justice.
Any other questions?
I just have one favor to ask. I have no problem with this. I think it's just common sense. Could we write up a job description with Ms. Trapp? Okay, because I'm saying, in the event when the next law clerk comes in, okay.
I submitted one. It should be
It's
attached.
It's attached to the
I
back.
didn't, I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it should be attached.
Thinking about that too much.
Well,
I know you asked them to be updated anyway, so.
Because when I was reading through it, it seemed like I kind of figured there was somebody slated for it. I just wasn't sure if that would be the permanent job description or that was more of a benefit of having that
Yeah.
specific person in there. Okay,
Yeah, it is attached.
thank you.
And as I said, this is a unique situation specific to this clerk. Going forward, should she leave county employment.
We'll need to reassess.
Have to
Yeah, we'll
revisit
reassess
the
it.
issue.
Okay.
Okay.
But we looked at it as being the most cost-effective way to do this.
Oh, no, like I said, this is a no-brainer.
And also, I just want to say one other thing. When I spoke to county council some time ago on problem-solving courts, I did indicate to you that we had received grant funding that covered some of our expenses in the initial year and a half or so, and some of that grant funding did go to administrative expenses, which, so the fact that Stephanie was compensated through that grant for the extra work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Mr. Morganelli's here. If we
If
have,
I could just thank the judge for that letter that you wrote us on the problem, how that was allocated. That helped me, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'm, anytime you,
Hello?
county council wishes
I
an update
keep
on
cutting
our
out,
progress,
Sharon.
I'm happy to do that.
okay, thank you so much.
Hold on,
Thank you.
Bob.
Thank
I
you.
don't know why, but hold on.
John, we already did yours, but if you want to come up and say something, we approved it for tomorrow, to send it for tomorrow night.
Let me just apologize to council because I was planning on being here. I came back and I got a phone call right before the meeting started. But I learned a long time ago from a judge that once you won the case, keep quiet. So all I would say is I thank council for consideration and approving this on to council tomorrow night, correct?
Yes, it's
And
full vote.
the reasons were set forth, I hopefully adequately in my memo. We have been, have a lot of cases that are serious that we've been, and now we're short-staffed. So I think this will help us in the long run. So appreciate the council's consideration.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next thing on the agenda is Department of Human Services, Greysdale Division, housekeepers, plural. Department of Human Services, part-time housekeepers, 2 full-time housekeepers, 2. So apparently Greysdales have gotten awfully messy in the last couple weeks.
A little dirty.
Little dirty. So we need more people to clean?
Well, so the structure and the approach for housekeeping has changed. And they've assigned, what they've done at Greysdale is they've now assigned teams to each floor, and they track it in a different way with regard to the housekeeping. And in order to assign, my understanding is that in order to assign a team to each floor and not end up with 2 floors with a partial person on them, this puts a dedicated team assigned to each floor on a daily basis, which will allow for efficient operations. There is a new tracking mechanism that is used. There is a new approach, and there's a new system that they're using. I believe there are some new products that they're using as well. So that is why the request is being made, and it's removing part-time housekeepers to replace with full-time housekeepers, and the budget will assume all of the costs.
So are these going to be two new bargaining unit people?
They are.
They are. So there's going to be two. Okay. And this is per. It was 26,000 for the part-time. It's 51,000 for the per. So it's 84. It's actually $168,000 for the two positions, right? Not 84,000.
No, it's 84,000.
For two positions, full-time?
To create.
Per position. I imagine that would be per position because I wouldn't come to work for you for that.
Oh, you know what I did? You know what? I'm wrong. I'll update this for you. I did not double the benefits. That's my fault. I apologize.
Okay.
So you're right. I'm sorry. I need to change the benefit part of it.
So our total cost is
I will
going to be...
amend this.
Leaving the salary, right? I mean,
No, the salary is correct. So the 51,402 is correct for the two salaries. That should be correct. And double the benefit. Yeah, I'll give you an amended form for
Okay,
tomorrow.
well,
I'll fix it.
I
I'm
was just
sorry.
curious because I was looking at it, it didn't seem,
I'll correct it.
All right, and this will be a pest. We're supposed to be saving money at Greysdale. It seems every week we're spending more money at Greysdale. We keep adding people, and we make money, and then all of a sudden we're adding more people because our efficiencies and the way we're doing it isn't the way it's supposed to be, and all of a sudden we need new people to make it more efficient and better, and it keeps going on and on and on.
If we keep moving on the agenda, I have a really big savings I'm going to deliver for you.
You have a big savings.
I do.
I'm just talking about this one now. We're in the moment. We're in the moment right now. I mean, it
Living in
seems...
this moment, it's an increased expense.
Okay, so do we have people we job out to that we're going to get rid of? Like, do we use a cleaning service that's no longer going to be needed because we're adding these people?
No, there are not outside contracted services that are currently utilized. This is a change, as I understand it, this is a change in the approach for the cleaning of the facility, which will provide efficiencies overall. So I would say tomorrow night, Kathy Allen may be able to speak a little bit more to some of the efficiencies that are being realized. Okay. So with reductions in overtime or time there on the weekend. Oh, it is.
Just, Council, just overall, when we take a look at the housekeeping at Greysdale, is something that we've been working on, trying to improve the delivery of that function overall. As this chap had referred to, we started with changing some of the products that we're bringing in. We brought training into this particular staff. So the request here to move from 2 part-time to 2 additional full-time housekeepers is really to upgrade the quality of the service being provided to the facility overall. Mr. Kraft, I'm with you. If you don't know me by now, I grudgingly add dollars when needed, but in this case, I do believe overall it will be a benefit to the facility completely. You know, one of the things we also have to understand is that the impression of the facility, when people come to visit, we have to make sure that, potential residents that come in, the facility's got to be clean, just for the residents that are there, but also from a constantly bringing new people into the facility. This is an area that I think will help achieve an overall quality improvement in the cleaning of the facility and maintaining of the facility, but also on an ongoing basis then help us keep the beds full from a first impression basis along with that. And as Ms. Trapp said, there are other efficiencies we'll be gaining. I can't detail all of them for you in the moment, but on a net basis, I think it's a worthwhile investment in the staffing that are there.
Anybody else have any questions in regards to this? Or?
I just think I probably want to understand what the efficiency is. Right now, it seems like you're going to have a better product if you're doubling the labor. And I just, you've got some time for tomorrow.
Sure. To gather additional information. We can do that.
When I think of process improvement, many times I think of it improvement that allows you to improve the product and cut the labor.
Sure.
Here you have a process improvement that you're doubling the labor and you promise a better product.
And I think part of it is consistency, having it consistent on the floors for the sake of the residents. But, we'll collect information for tomorrow.
Could part of this be because we're finally just about at capacity and we haven't been for so many years?
It could be.
I mean, I'm just thinking, there's always other sides to this paisley shade of gray called Greysdale. So maybe.
When we do the budget, I always look at what's the table organization, how many people we have full and part-time. Is this going to change that number, or is these 2 people full-time in the budget?
No, they're not in the current budget because we're adding 2 full-time people and removing 2 part-time people. So it's taking 2 part-time people out of the budget to add 2 full-time headcount. So that's what, correct, that's why it's coming in front of council.
All right, anything else?
Real quick. Are these positions currently filled, the part-times?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't affect anyone's job, they're all vacant.
No, I just wasn't sure if they
Yep.
were, if the part-timers would be offered.
All right, we'll move this forward tomorrow night. Next thing on the budget, don't sit down, Department of Human Services, Greysdale Division Laundry.
Okay.
Now here we're taking 2 part-time laundry utilities and making to full-time laundry finisher 1. So we're taking 2 halves of people and merging them
Right.
and making 1 person all day long, every day of the week. I imagine laundry's fun at Greysdale, so.
And what drives this particular issue is different than most everything else. There is an individual who has been an employee at Greysdale for almost 21 years, and she moved into a laundry position. She has some physical issues. She can't meet all of the essential functions of the job with or without a reasonable accommodation. We have made a reasonable accommodation for her. She's a good employee. The physical capabilities that she has, which allow her to meet those requirements of the job, she does a good job with. She's a productive member of the team. They like her. But there is a very important piece of the job with a piece of equipment called the mangler, kind of scary, that she is unable to do, that we have made an accommodation to take out of her job description because of her length of service and the physical limitations that she has. So the laundry manager, his only concern was it's important to have a full-time productive person who's able to be in that role as well in order to have things run completely smoothly. We have an obligation as an organization to make an accommodation for this person. She's been a long-term employee. She's been a very good employee. She's very, very positive. They don't want to lose her. This is in an effort, she's getting the accommodation no matter what. This is in an effort to support the overall laundry in support of the facility so that they don't have any other piece fall off, which is why we eliminated 2 positions for the 1.
So who's running the mangler now?
People other than this employee. Just not this employee. But all of the other employees in the laundry are capable of running it.
I'm curious, what is a mangler?
It looks like a really big tank when you look at it from the outside, but it's a piece of equipment in which they feed linen when it's wet, and when it goes into the piece of equipment, it comes out dry and folded on the other end.
Dry and folded?
Mm-hmm.
Taking over our jobs, John.
It's a very interesting, but it looks like a tank. When you look at it, it looks like a big piece of military
They go
equipment
in
on
wet
the
and come
outside.
out folded.
Mm-hmm, there are big rollers in there.
And you call it the mangler because
call
it
it the-
mangles sheets every so often?
I guess that's why they call it the mangler. It's kind of a scary name.
If it gets out of alignment and everything, and then you have mangled sheets, that's
Would
why they call
mangle
it the
the sheet.
mangler.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on this expenditure? Seeing none, we'll pass it forward to tomorrow night. Next one is the money-saving one you
Here
had
we
talked
go.
about. Department of Human Services, DHS Fiscal Administrator.
So as promised, at last Personnel Committee, we talked about adding the lead accountant at Greysdale.
Oh, that's right.
There was an open position that had not been filled, and then there was the position of the DHS Fiscal Administrator. Eliminating the position of the DHS Fiscal Administrator and filling the position, moving this headcount into the the Nursing Home Fiscal Administrator, creates a total savings of $89,782. So this were the moving parts that we talked about that we promised to deliver on. This kind of finishes it out. Dave Pinter retired. His position was not filled. We created the lead accountant position, and Peter Corey moved into that. So overall, total cost savings is $89,782 after everybody moves and is placed.
So this is the one that I put faith in you and John that you would make it happen, and you did.
I did, yes, we did.
This
He
was
helped.
2 months ago we did that, I think.
No, it was last month. It was in March.
No, in March?
I mean, it was in February.
Okay, more efficient. All right, any questions on that one? None? Savings, move it forward? Happy with it? Happy with it. All right, and the final part of my meeting, which is the best, is adjournment. Make it so.
Mr. Geisinger is not with us today. He is by phone. Is there anyone that would like to run the meeting from the Finance Committee, or?
I'm not on.
All right. Where is the agenda? I don't see it there.
It's right below.
It's right on the same page. They just put it below.
Now that the personnel meeting is adjourned, we'll start the Finance Committee for March 15, 2017. Courtesy of the floor, is there anybody that cares to address the council? Okay. Review of Act 152 of 2016, blight demolition fund fee. I imagine somebody from the administration will do that.
Actually, this was something that we received a notification from CCAP about Act 152 of 2016. And what it does is it authorizes counties to levy a maximum $15 fee for each deed or mortgage recorded for the purposes of a county blight demolition fund. Now, recall during the budget process, we did approve a funding for a study regarding this issue. So what I wanted to do was bring this to council's attention, that if this is something that we wanted to pursue, that there is a funding mechanism that exists. Attached to the information is a sample resolution from Lawrence County who adopted the fee. Now, Mr. Hurlinger is here. If he'd like to address this, I'd appreciate anything he would have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Cusick. Council, this is a mechanism to put into place funds that would help with a latter part of a blight remediation process. When you get to a certain point and you've taken up a blighted property and you need to demolish what's on it and clean the slate, and then it's an expensive process. I can tell you that the city of Bethlehem has not gotten to this point with one of the more well-known structures that they've been dealing with from blight prospect, and they've expended more than $400,000 so far. So it's a really good idea once you know whether or not you have a property or properties that need to have this done, that you have a resource to do it. Otherwise, you have to take it out of the county coffers as you go along, or it has to happen through the municipalities, and many municipalities don't always have the resources for that. Right now, I can't tell you that we need this because we haven't completed our study to tell you what the blight situation is and what our inventory is in the county. But when I get close to that point, or when I have definitive numbers, I'll be certain to bring them up to you, and then at least you'll know that you'll have a means of dealing with things at that end of the process. And as I say, the blight remediation process begins with dealing with the landowner and only ends down the road, and only ends in some cases with acquiring the property, doing demolition, and not every property that you acquire requires demolition. So this is an out that you'll have to help municipalities if needed, and once we identify the inventory. So it's good information, but I can't support beyond that, other than that's good information at the moment.
So, can I ask a question about this? So this would be like a fund that we would collect, and then we would have like another a granting process of whose blighted property raises to the surface, and we'll give them money to get it, because, you know, as a county, we don't have any of those local ordinances and things like that to do this.
Yeah, we would probably utilize this fund in conjunction with the municipalities and with an education program that shows them how to get to a certain point in the process. If they reach that point and they wouldn't have sufficient resources to do it, and if the situation were critical enough, certainly the county would be able to step up and help out with that. But there's a lot of ifs in there.
I mean, because like Easton and Bethlehem could take all this money. I mean, what kind of revenue would you generate a year? I mean, how many deeds go through the county?
I have no idea.
Well, that would be a piece of information. It would be nice. I mean, if you're going to raise, you know,
And that's why I
$40,000, it's kind
recommend
of a
that this
waste
is
of
good
time.
information now, but we don't have any, DCED doesn't have any evidence that this is necessary right now, because we haven't completed our inventory. We may get to the end of the inventory and determine there aren't enough circumstances where this would be necessary. But if we do see a preponderance of properties that would probably need this, we certainly would come back and say, you remember this thing? We probably need to go down that road.
I mean, on surface, I'd be against it right now. I mean, it would be punishing the people that are buying homes that are not in a blight situation. You know, I think when we had the other meeting before, talking about blighted property and attaching a lien on it or something onto that property, I think is the better way to go. I mean, someone who's moving and obviously moving into a more than likely a livable home shouldn't be paying the penalty for it.
Right. This is one option that one county has initiated, and it's available. But as I said, DCED can't promote it at this time because we don't have any evidence that it's necessary at this point. But it's good information.
I guess the question I have is, I mean, we constantly see pictures, I think it's in the Express Times website, of vacant or abandoned properties, particularly in the city of Easton.
Right.
Would this be a potential way to partner with them to
Yes.
approach some of these
Yeah, it's
properties?
one mechanism that you could use, and certainly if the county would put together this fund, it would be another way to support a process that any of the 38 municipalities, but especially the cities, which tend to have a higher incidence of demolition necessary blight circumstances, it would be a way to partner with them and help them out. But as I say, beyond that, I can't really speak to it because we don't have the inventory that we're working on to say that this is a strong demand. I would imagine that the cities would have a strong demand, unquestionably. But, you know, our job is to manage all 38 municipalities, so I hesitate to go beyond what I've said.
Could you find out how many or how much money this would potentially raise? Because it says a maximum of 15. It doesn't mean you need to do 15. And then if there is any interest from some of the municipalities as part of your study.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We'll find that information out and bring it back to council.
But I think that information should be part of your study. And I don't know if I would let that derail or, you know, not derail, it's not the term I want. Just my take is that this is good information.
Yep.
You've already, you know, I think you got a track of where you're going on. You know, keep going with that. And this is, you know, an arrow in our quiver that we may or may not want to use. It's good information to have.
And it'll be in our quiver as far as what we recommend to council as far as dealing with the various stages.
Yeah.
Now we have this for that particular stage.
Yeah. And just to, and I
thank you,
think we all
Mr.
know
Cusick,
this,
for
but
sharing.
this was initiated by council. It wasn't initiated by the administration. So you coming up with the way you've caveated everything, I think is appropriate, because you're not advocating for it at this point.
Yeah, we can only provide that level of information that we have at the level of our study. But it's a good tool because someone obviously in the state is using it. It doesn't mean it's a necessary tool or the only tool.
Thanks. Any other questions on that?
Oh, that's really important. No, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, the next is a discussion regarding the Greysdale capital project funding. It's the transferring of $60,000 from the shower project to the kitchen floor project at Greysdale. Stan, are you going to talk to this?
Yes, Council. And this is something we will then talk about in your capital projects.
Exactly.
What has happened over the past few years, which everybody well knows, that the kitchen floor went out for competitive bid probably 4 or 5 times in some unofficial ones. The last 2 under my guidance came in well over nearly $600,000. We just had a second bid bust over the allowed number of 325. With that being said, we were able to, using Home Rule Charter and our procurement policies, to go back and talk with the apparent low bidder, who was KC Mechanical. And speaking with them this past Friday, as we learned we can gain some efficiencies and some things we can and cannot do to allow us to pass the State Department of Health, because that's been a sore point for them for the last 3 years. So working with them, we found that the balance would be probably close to 375, which was the original allocation in 2016. So now the shortfall we encountered of 60 grand would then fund this, because in 17 we allocated 325.
And any questions for Stan?
So we're finally going to get this kitchen floor done that we've been talking about for 12 years?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
John?
Will this require a budget amendment?
No,
No,
it's
this
in the
just
capital projects, and
okay.
it's within the.
Yeah, there's a
line
percentage that you're allowed to.
66013.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we are going to talk about this. It's the timing, the way we used to have it scheduled. We would talk about this generally before it got to the finance, but we are going to talk about this. So, Stan, your showers has a budget approved for 2017 of $130,000,
Yes.
so that'll give you $60,000 to finish that up.
From the remaining, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's okay.
Then also, as we talked about before, we're going to, we've identified ways to do some of the shower work inside with our own men, which is good.
You found some prisoners that are carpenters or what?
We have good plumbers and men on staff at Greysdale and here. Some real good people.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? I think Matt, I don't know if Bob's on the line, but and Matt, well, both Matts are on the capital project. I would recommend this. This is not a surprise to me. Kathy did talk to me before. Of course, I always talk to Stan. So I think we would recommend this?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The next is review of changes to the Register of Will and Clerk of the Orphans Court fee schedule. Is there anybody who's going to address that?
Gina Gibbs sent me an email asking if it was going to be discussed.
If there's nobody here to address it, I'm going to table it. Is there anybody to discuss review of the article contract 13 Gilmore and Associates?
It's Brian Cope.
If I may, the selection of Gilmore Associates, we feel proud in this. This is the RFP for the Northern Trail feasibility study.
Mm-hmm.
It would go from Portland to Walnutport, and with that, we would intersect roughly 4 trails through the DNL, the 911 Trail, the Appalachian Trail, and also the Norbath Trail, which we just received the grant for $424,000 for Brian Cope, and I'm standing here for Brian Cope. With that being said, this RFP went out and we had probably 30 people, 30 engineering firms looking at it because of the high profile. Out of that, we had 12 people who replied back with proposals, and we then went to an interview process of 4. And we selected collectively in our team, which was 8 people, for us to award it to Gilmore and Associates. I have Kent Baird with me to my left, who is with Gilmore. And the interesting part is, if you look at Kent's background, Kent is also the previous open space director for Bucks County. So he brings with us all this other ancillary advantages. Additionally, there is another gentleman who's part of the team, and I do have with me the RFP that they did submit. And his name is Robert Thomas. He's one of the premier landscape/trail architects in the country. He was fundamental in getting the 911 trail together, Appalachian Trail, and the interesting part about him is he also leads bike tours in and around Bangor, and all the other trails. So he's a nice guy, great guy, and we're very proud to have him also. So that's who we selected. Collectively, it was a unanimous vote for Gilmore, and we suspect it'll be done within the year upon approvals from council and our contract, which they've already said that they will honor. Okay. Any questions, comments?
So what is the product that we're paying, 50,
It is the
almost
feasibil- It is the
60,000?
feasibility study of building a trail between Walnutport and the northern ears of DNL, which goes all the way up through the Poconos above Whitewater, and then to the Delaware River. There's, this has been on the agenda for years, and we're just now bringing it to fruition. Originally, it was always got stuck somewhere, and so through administration, we were able to get this and push it forward and do the work, which is nice.
So this wouldn't be a design. This would be
No, the feasibility,
below
how we
a
can
higher
do it.
level than the design.
Yes, because there's going to be a lot of places. Do we reuse the abandoned railroad tracks, or how do we now join with the 9/11 Trail? How do we work with the Appalachian Trail? How do we work with the Wildlands Institute? There's a whole bunch of different categories we need to address, and that's where their expertise comes in.
Okay. Any other questions for this? Matt Dietz, this sort of falls into your bailiwick too with the open spaces and everything?
Yeah. No, it's just Brian's been working on trying to get someone to actually get the feasibility on for it. So.
Yes, he has.
So I think that we would forward this. Okay. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Barron, you have an audit report for us?
Sorry, Steve.
That's all right. I see enough of you anyway, Ken. Good afternoon, members of council. I'm going to present these audit reports to you in order on your list. So the first one is the hotel tax distribution. This report should be familiar to everyone here at council. It specifically deals with the Arts Quest grant and the PBS 39 grant. When these monies were allocated in May 5th of 2008, there was a proviso in the resolution, or the ordinance, I should say, that required an audit of these funds. We've done that every year without fail. This will be the last, as the monies now have been awarded 100%. There was at PBS 39. There was a 100% turnover of the finance department in early 2016. So that hampered things a little bit. The money that is there and accounted for. We made a suggestion about policies and procedures. Mostly that is for the future. If money is awarded to them again with the same type of a grant. I don't think anything has been done with this 12.5% by council other than to award some of that money elsewhere, I believe. But it's something to consider in the future if we decide to award a grant this way again, and if council would ask me to audit it. Any questions about that report? Okay. The jail commissary and inmate telephone system. This is a report that has come back, and it was actually done relatively quickly. The telephone system in the commissary is now outsourced because of the requirements of the state. The jail needed us to do an audit of this, or actually a review, just to make sure that those funds were handled accordingly through the contract. So it was a finding on their licensing or their compliance check. So we made sure we took care of it, even though these specific services are all outsourced. If you listen to podcasts, the Global Tel Link will be familiar to you from the Serial podcast. That's how pretty much most prison phone calls are made in the United States of America. So basically, we looked at the Global Tel Link, and we looked at the Keefe contract, which is the commissary goods. Little history on this. The county wasn't making much money when it ran the commissary in-house. So that service was contracted out. If you remember, Mr. Cusick might remember this from back a while ago. We used to have split purchases on our P card because people were buying electronics at Walmart and you'd have to make sure those goods and services complied with state law with regard to what could be in a jail. So Keefe actually takes all the guesswork out of it. As a matter of fact, family members can go online, and oftentimes family members do go online, specifically if the inmate owes money. So when money is deposited on their account, if they owe money, there's a specific percentage that can get taken off. So what a lot of inmates will do if they owe room and board, they'll have their relatives purchase things online and have it sent to the jail for them. They call them care packages or whatever. Global Tellink works much the same way. People will deposit money on the account, and if you get a phone call, you pay per minute of that phone call. It also allows for monitoring and surveillance of said phone call, so those calls are recorded.
Like Trump Tower.
Exactly. So we are wiretapping you without really wiretapping you. But on a side note, my microwave is now clean, so the cameras inside can actually see what's going on in my house. So sorry. Any questions about this specific report? There was nothing really to be gleaned from that, other than the grievance process with Keefe. A lot of times, if merchandise doesn't get delivered in a satisfactory manner because it is our contracted service, we should be following up on some of those things and making sure that the state knows what's happening with those complaints. Any questions about any of that? Okay. The next audit report is one that I do each year. It is actually a vendor payment review. I often get information with regard to vendors or questions about new vendors, payments to a vendor. Is there enough documentation? Is there a contract? This seems to not be backed up. We do that piecemeal throughout the year if somebody raises a complaint, especially if a lot of money is going out the door. Those complaints come to me from various people and in various different ways, and then I use the ERP to do a little bit of research, make requests to the administration to follow those up. This, however, is a systematic fraud review. So the first procedure is, anything over $10,000. We look for invoices. We look to the invoice number, the vendor ID, the org, the key, just to make sure everything looks okay in each of the $10,000 transactions. We also look for voided payments. We want to make sure that all voided payments are not, if they're voided out, why they were voided out. If a check is voided, are those check numbers in order? After that, if there's a whole series of checks voided out, why were they voided? Voided checks are usually a way that people will, utilize a check out of order or pull a check for a specific purpose, either to convert it in some way, shape, or form. So we make sure of that. We look for employee addresses similar to vendor addresses. We look for Social Security numbers, vendor IDs. We look for specific IDs related to, is somebody using or is a vendor using a Social Security number? Does that Social Security number match up to an employee? Though that's oftentimes if somebody gets sloppy with regard to a vendor scheme within a government or within a business, when they have to put in a vendor number, they will actually put in their own personal Social Security number. A lot of times if you don't go through Social Security to get a vendor number or what they call it, the tax ID number, oftentimes Social Security Administration will let you use your Social Security number. So we look for all of those different things. We look for payments over $500 that are paid 180 days past the invoice date. That could potentially be the sign of a lapping scheme. We look at the summaries and filter transactions less than zero to investigate negative checks. If there are checks that actually put money back into an account somewhere, that's also a way of sort of balancing a bank account without really balancing the bank account. So we look at all those things, and we found none of those issues in this audit report this time around. So it's a good check to run, and we can do it relatively quickly because we have the ACL software. So we run specific reports, we pull information down, and then we compare the data charts based on tests that we have set up within our system. Any questions about that?
Yeah, the one thing that you mentioned is gaps in vendor check numbers were identified. What are reasons for gaps in vendor check numbers, and what are they?
So it could be anything from a misprint of a check. So it could be anything from a check that runs through the system and then gets spended or mangled in the mail. If that check is never cashed, if that check number is never used. And why it's important is when you balance your checkbook, your check numbers, if they're all in order, the way I usually do it is I start at one end of the checkbook and my wife starts at the other end, and then we meet in the middle. So I know the checks I write versus the checks my wife writes. But I mean, when you do it that way, it's a way to identify how checks are written. If you look back what happened in the criminal division a couple of years ago, the check numbers there was a huge gap in the checks, and in between that gap in the checks where those checks weren't accounted for is where the checks were being written out of the old bail account. So as you're looking at those numbers, if there is a gap, we would need a reason. Also, Brandon, who now works in the fiscal department, when he discovered the fraud on the criminal division account, where people were making their own checks, you'll notice if you keep your numbers in order, if you identify a gap or numbers that fall outside that range, it's a very quick indicator when you're balancing or running a bank reconciliation to determine whether or not money is being, or checks were actually written by this specific department. So that's really why it's important. And it's almost like when you have a receipt book, you want the receipts to be numbered and the receipts to be in a specific order. So if there are gaps, you wonder what kind of receipts were being issued, and is it to cover something up? Is there an explanation? Why were those receipts not issued in order? The same thing with checks.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
One of the last things you say, we were not engaged to and did not conduct an examination, the objective of which would be the expression of an opinion of the county system for making payment to vendors via check. Accordingly, we do not express such an opinion. Had we performed additional procedures, other matters might have come to our attention that would have been reported to you. Is that something that we should be asking for? Is that a lot more work, or, why?
What it is when you do an agreed-upon procedure, and any agreed-upon procedure that my office does, which has a very limited and specific scope, like we're running specific tests, we didn't do the risk assessment. We didn't ask people if they had any, if they knew of any material fraud. We didn't go through all the steps that we would have in a normal audit program. This is just sort of a quick look to make sure that we don't have any red flags for fraud or indicators for fraud. If we did, we would take a step back, we would look further, and that might lead us to engage further in a project. Obviously, we're not going to leave anything unturned, but these are just indicators. Obviously, there could be something else that somebody is doing. There could be a situation that was not brought to our attention, or there could be information that just falls outside these tests that could impact and materially impact our financial statements. We weren't engaged to look at those types of things. We were just looking for these specific indicators of fraud. That language is standard language that you'll find under the government auditing standards.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
It just struck me as kind of just needed comment and clarification, and you did. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. The P-card audit, so we did the procurement card audit this past year, and this is a follow-up. Our recommendation was the work system holds a great deal of promise. in making the entire P-card process more efficient when it's fully functional. What we basically said is management needs to determine the extent of which they want to use the works. Cardholders and supervisors then must be trained on the process and actively monitor compliance. Basically looking at P-card logs. Do we do P-card logs? Do we scan receipts? All of those types of things need to somehow be put into a policies and procedures, and it needs to be done universally. The system, which was built and customized for the county, has a great deal of functions that we do not use, and some areas of efficiency we've implemented, some we have not. So what we asked to do with our audit report is to make sure that we're all uniform with regard to how we use the work system. Any questions about any of that? All right. And then last but not least, the Criminal Division Agency Fund. Policies and procedures was the big thing. That was they're continuously reviewed in that office, specifically in the Criminal Division, and the corrective action has been taken. So there's nothing further that really needs to be done. Leanne Fisher does an excellent job updating policies and procedures. She's been there since the fraud happened in the Criminal Division. She's worked very, very hard to make sure that there are checks and balances and policies and procedures in place, and she does a wonderful job. Also, manual receipts. The procedure has been updated, and there's no issues there. Manual receipts are obviously a big deal. The other thing in this audit was payments over $10,000. So payments over $10,000, specifically in the Criminal Division, that are made in cash, an IRS reporting form is required. So completing the Form 8300 for all cases the bail amount is over $10,000 is going to be done, so corrective action has been taken. It was being done sometimes. It was not being done on other occasions. Some people would mortgage a house or put up a mortgage to a house. Some people would come in with $10,000 cash to slap it down for bail. So there are a lot of different things that would happen, and this Form 8300 was being done in some cases, and it was absent in others. So we just wanted to make sure that we were doing that universally, just to make sure that funds that were being put up for bail were being reported to the IRS correctly, and that they weren't the proceeds of a criminal activity that wasn't being reported to the IRS. Pretty important in that specific situation. Any other questions about any of the reports? I also wanted to apologize for tomorrow. We will be dancing for St. Patrick's Day, the O'Grady Quinlan troupe, so I will be with the girls. So.
When you say we?
Not me, no. Otherwise, Bernie would have already had videos that would be all over the internet. So, yeah.
Where are you with the new outside auditor? How is that process going?
The process is great. We are ahead of the game. We are ahead of where we were last year. That has nothing to do with the relationship with the external auditors. We have a full complement of auditors this year that are all trained in the audit work. So we were down the last 2 years. We were down one staff member. We're not down one staff member anymore. The external auditors were supposed to be here this week because of impending weather and their other commitments to other projects. They decided to push that back a week. It didn't matter to us, really. So they'll be here consecutively the next 2 weeks working out of my office. So they operate a little bit different than the previous auditors did that usually kept a 9 to 6, 9 to 7 type deal. These folks will probably be there even after hours. They have access to my building day and night, and they're staying in a local hotel. So they'll be a little bit more present in the building during the day, and then in my office in the evenings a lot later, from what I gather. So,
Steve, one thing is we had a finding, and you had recommendations in regard to Chapter 13 purchasing for the admin manual. I've not seen anything of that, and I know you can't actually lead that, but have you heard anything? Or?
I haven't heard anything, and a lot of those issues had to do with definitions then that I would test, i.e. what is a professional service? What should the limit be on what the executive can unilaterally contract for? I think we had talked about in Lehigh County it's around $15,000, and it seems to be anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000 in most counties, and we're at $100,000. And the executive said, well, it should be $300,000. So there were a lot of questions about what the Article 13 should look like. I am happy right now because every contract that goes out has an audit clause in it so that we can get relevant information either by counsel asking me to request it or I can unilaterally request it from the vendor. So our contract, our boilerplate language is good, but we really do need to modernize the language in Title 13. I think the types of services we contract for, and nothing has really been done as far as I know. I don't know of any meetings. I had offered out Tony Sabino from my office to be part of those meetings. Tony was a member of the original group that met to make recommendations and to sort of look at our audit recommendations from the past during the previous or two previous administrations. And I think his knowledge of that from the last 20 years would be invaluable to a group like that, but I haven't really heard about anything, to answer your question.
Anything else for Mr. Barron? Anything else for the Finance Committee? Yeah, please.
Good evening. I was wondering if I make an attempt to explain the fee structure with the Recorder of Wills, if we could bring that back onto the table.
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think part of the problem was in the copying, but if you turn to page 2 of that document, and I will try to explain this the best I can, and I actually know a little bit about this, although I don't work in that area. About a year ago, we hired a vendor called County Fusion, I believe it's called, and this was giving us the ability, it's a software program that people could be able to do searching online from off-site and things of that nature. I think, and unfortunately it didn't copy well, but the major change here is that they're not looking to increase a fee. They're actually looking to adjust it a little bit. And on the very top, if you look under the documents copy in that first block in the last line where it says 25 cents per page, under the daily membership it used to be 30 cents a page, and the rest of the two were 25 cents. There was a situation, I guess, with the vendor in trying to reconcile that to the daily membership fee. They suggested that we lower that to 25 cents so that all three of them would be at 25 cents. So that is the one change. And the other thing is when they do search, they can actually find the document sheet, so they don't need to request that from us. And therefore, that is being changed to a no charge. So those two last lines, is everybody with me on that? No charge for the document sheets across the three categories, and that the daily per case, if there's a copying fee, it's going to be lowered from 30 cents to 25 cents. And this was being driven by the vendor. It's not. We're not coming to promote these fees or to adjust these fees other than that.
So, Jim, this is cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be $1 per docket per case. Now that's not the case anymore. And it used to be 30 cents per page, and now it's 25 cents per page.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the docket fee, they see it anyway, so we weren't collecting any fee on that anyway.
Does this seem like this is a real no-brainer to me, right? Am I missing something? I occasionally do. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I understand why you're here, John. But I mean, this is
Yeah, it's a very minor fee change, and unfortunately, I was communicating with Gina, and Ms. Gibbs was unable to attend the meeting, and I didn't want it to be postponed for another month, so I thought I would take a stab at trying to explain it, because it is a very, very insignificant change.
Yeah, you did a good job. I was not going to put this forward
Right.
until you came up here, and now I will.
Okay, great. Okay.
No, we're going to move it forward.
It broke my heart to come up and talk about less revenue, so I'm sorry about that.
Good job, Jim.
Thank you.
We are done with finance, and we're adjourned. And what we do now is just take a little break. We have to get that to stop recording for this meeting. This is the mechanics that has been explained to me. That takes about 5 minutes, and then we'll start again with the capital project. So we don't have to wait until 6 o'clock, but we do have to wait a couple of minutes until that stops recording and starts again.